Yes, we are gonna call this meeting to order and Lori is gonna give us all of our housekeeping items and we will get started.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is RCEA Board Clerk Lori Chiqueta. Sorry, maybe unplug the headphones, and I wonder if that's jamming it up, sorry.
We know it's working.
Yes, it is, unfortunately. So for those of you here at Warfinger, the microphones will be on throughout the meeting. And please remember to speak clearly, one person at a time. Say your name when you start talking, so people online and on the phone can follow the discussion. There are no board members participating remotely. We have three presenters who will be presenting remotely. For community members planning to speak during the public comment period, please come to this podium if you are able. So the microphone picks up your voice. Phone participants, press *9 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute. And raise your hand early, please, so we don't miss you. Public comment may be limited to 3 minutes at the chair's discretion. Email comments are being accepted at publiccomment@redwoodenergy.org until the chair closes the public comment period for that agenda item. If anyone participating remotely experiences disconnection or a disrupted connection, please try to notify us by calling or texting 707-382-7336. Again, 707-382-7336, or by emailing publiccomment@redwoodenergy.org. Chair?
All right, thank you, Lori. So we have no remote participants, so can we have a roll call?
Yes. Director Arroyo.
Here.
Vice Chair Bauer.
Here.
Director Skip Jorgensen.
Here.
Director Mobley is absent today. There is no sitting Bureau director that is going to be appointed shortly. Director Jason Ramos.
Here.
Director Elise Scafani. Not yet here, absolutely. Chair Schaefer.
Here.
Director Tuttle.
Here.
Director Wilson.
Here.
Director Sherry Booth.
Here.
There is a quorum.
All right, thank you, Lori. That'll take us to our second item, which is reports from member entities. Do we have anybody that would like to report from their jurisdiction? Anybody? Not seeing anything, that'll take us into oral and written communications. This is the time provided to address the board on matters that are not on the agenda. At the conclusion of oral communications, the board may respond to statements, and any request that requires board action will be set for a future agenda or referred to staff. Do we have anybody that wishes to comment in person? And not seeing anybody, is there anybody on Zoom? Okay, we'll be on Zoom. All right, that'll take us to the consent calendar. Item 4, all matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the board and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items, and if discussion is required, this item can be removed from consent and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, board members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for discussion. Item 4.1, approve the minutes of the November 20th, 2024 board meeting. Item 4.2, approve disbursements report. Item 4.3, accept financial reports. Item 4.4, adopt resolution 2024-14, adopting updates to the energy risk management policy. Item 4.5, accept RCEA racial justice plan progress report. Item 4.6, authorize the RCEA executive director to execute the Department of Energy Grid Resilience Innovation Partnership GRIP program funds for tribal energy resilience sovereignty project GD000967. Conditional award once finalized and reviewed by special counsel. Are there any members of the board that wish to pull something from consent? Any members of the public? Here in person, not seeing anybody on Zoom? All right, I will take a motion and a second for the consent calendar.
Move to
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Since we're all here in the room, we can do a show of hands vote. All in favor, aye. And motion carries unanimously. Folks, that'll take us into CCE business. We do have a CCE quorum. And we have no old CCE business, so that'll take us to item 7, new business, 7.1, local distributed energy storage requests for offers. So we have Jocelyn Nguyen, Senior Power Resources Manager, to report.
Thank you, Chair Schaefer. All right, so I am here to seek your approval for a, yet another solicitation for, this time for local resources, and we're focusing this one on local energy storage resources. So, several reasons for us launching this solicitation right now. As you all know, we need energy storage to transition to renewables, both in RCEA's portfolio as well as on our, our local grid, to maintain reliability as we transition to, intermittent sources of power. As you all know as well, we have, sites here in Humboldt that formerly hosted operational biomass power plants. And those pose, viable opportunities for development. Because, energy storage and biomass tend to have a similar project footprint. As you know, we were in contract with the Fairhaven Energy Storage project that unfortunately was terminated earlier this year. Because that project faced some kind of insurmountable hurdles, but we're still hopeful that a storage project could be viable at the Fairhaven site. And then, as you know as well, we have a memorandum of understanding with the city of Blue Lake for storage development at the former Ultra Power plant site. And so we're hopeful in response to the solicitation that we see a response from that project that the city of Blue Lake is working on. And then, of course, our strategic goals, prioritize local power infrastructure development and resilience. So we're aiming to continue working toward those goals. We're proposing a set of eligibility criteria. So projects that respond to this solicitation would have to be energy storage or energy storage paired with renewable generation. They would have to be 20 megawatts or less. We're proposing that cap just to allow for, multiple smaller scale projects as opposed to kind of one mega project. And then that's just, size with, according to RCEA's portfolio needs. And then we're also requiring that projects be located within Humboldt, the local capacity area, sort of the electrical grid equivalent of our service territory. So we have that envelope stipulated in the solicitation. And then we express a preference for several different criteria. We are allowing projects that can't deliver resource adequacy to, submit offers, but we really do prefer RA resources. However, as we've explained to the board in the past, it is challenging. There's limited deliverability for RA in Humboldt. So we're going to be evaluating both types of projects. We are most interested in tolling contracts. So what that means is just that RCEA has full control over how the storage system, that says battery, but it should say storage system. We're trying to be technology agnostic, so my mistake there. But how the storage system is operated. So under a full toll arrangement, RCEA pays for the energy to charge the battery, the storage facility, and then gets the full benefit from any products that come out of the operation of the storage facility. And then we always usually express a preference for 20-year term or less, which is, it's pretty atypical to see a longer contract term, but we have that in there. And then we always express a preference for projects that are mature in their development process. So that means they've made progress and achieved milestones on site control, interconnection, permitting, and in this case also equipment procurement, which is increasingly becoming, a critical path item for projects. These are the scoring criteria we proposed for this solicitation. This is pretty in line with our typical scoring criteria. However, we did add some points to that fourth bullet point, environmental impact, because we actually added safety considerations for energy storage, for chemical batteries especially. Safety is a really important consideration. Especially, fire considerations, and so we wanted the ability to factor that into our evaluation of the projects. So we are valuing that one a little bit more. We took that away from the quantitative economic criteria, in the second bullet point. So about the RFO process, we are proposing to issue it this week, as soon as we get your approval. And that RFO open period would be for 3 months, so that's quite a bit longer than our normal solicitation periods, which are usually about 2 weeks to a month. And that is just to ensure that we get a robust response, to give folks enough time to kind of develop their proposals and hopefully achieve some of those development progress, milestones, and submit a stronger response to us. And then for documents that are being provided for your review, we have the protocol, which is like just the instructions. And then the pro forma energy storage agreement, the contract that we would use for this solicitation. And then there are a few other forms that are not included because they don't have any terms and conditions of the solicitation, and they're just sort of forms that we ask respondents to fill out. As per usual, we are asking that the board form an ad hoc offer review committee to review and approve the shortlist. And because, this wouldn't, the RFO wouldn't close until March, we would engage that committee in April after conducting our evaluation. And then hopefully we would be able to, get the shortlist approved within one meeting of the ad hoc committee, and then as needed throughout the negotiation process, we would engage that committee if any changes to some of the offers, or, if any issues come up in the negotiation process. But typically if we can get it done in one meeting to just approve the shortlist. I think that's all I saw. Yes.
All right, any questions for Jocelyn about that? Go ahead, Tree.
On one of the criteria slides, it said community benefits.
Yeah.
What examples of that they would show that would be community?
Yeah, so sometimes some developers have project labor agreements or community benefit agreements that they sign. And so we are looking for those when we're doing our evaluation of that criteria. We're also sort of looking at like, where is the project located? We want to be careful to not, double count environmental impacts and permitting issues, but like, is the project in a site that's going to be acceptable to the community, or is it like right next to a residential community, that kind of thing. Also, sometimes certain developers will offer like a community benefit fund that we would consider in that criteria as well. So yeah, it's kind of a variety of things.
So in my little community of Trinidad, we get a lot of outages due to shut down power line between us and Clam Beach. So it just takes that all of us out. I was wondering, could we add like perhaps some microgrid ability so we could have a small little microgrid added to this RFO?
Yeah, I would say microgrids are not precluded from this RFO as it's written. I would say those projects would probably be more expensive though, so we would definitely want to factor that into. Yeah, they might not look as competitive according to the same like evaluation criteria as other projects, but they would obviously score very well on community benefits. But that is kind of one of the lower criteria. But yeah, I mean, if you want us to explicitly factor that into the solicitation, you could consider that.
Yeah, a lot of my members of my community have been reaching out to me weekly asking, how do we have battery backup for the city of Trinidad? I asked the previous director, and he was thinking about it at the time, and but never got well with it. So.
Yeah. It's yeah, microgrids just they're probably not going to perform very well financially, so. I would think that it would be sort of an apples to orange comparison. But. Yeah, I could talk with, if that is the board's
Yeah.
direction, we could evaluate that.
And maybe we can have a conversation offline of just about what those projects would entail. It wouldn't necessarily be part of this solicitation, but for future, community projects. And
Yeah, it might make sense to roll that into a different initiative.
I appreciate the points given for community benefits, and then when I was looking at the preferred criteria, it didn't show up there, and I do see it's elsewhere in the RFO, but, did you point into where that's spelled out for folks?
It's in the scoring criteria under evaluation. I think it's like section 4 or 5.
Yeah, I see it in there, just there isn't much
Description.
information given, and I
Yeah.
guess that gives them flexibility, but I also I'll just say I would be open to them saying they would participate in like a bigger community benefits process, which there is a robust conversation underway about what that looks like for other renewable energy projects. And so I'd be I could see that like greater community fund having more impact if lots of different projects contribute to it, but I don't know how we would signal that to them unless we say in here, like, one possibility for community benefits would be committing a portion of funds to this, like, or committing to participate in and fund this greater community group, but it's still like very amorphous right now.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to do with that information. Maybe they can reach out about that, or how to like hopefully steer people in that direction.
they're talking about like something like we have like parking and loop for the city, or like there's a fund for all developers that if you're gonna develop, you put into this fund. I think that's something great that we could bring back and develop a community benefit fund that maybe we have more say that all projects contribute into versus right now, for example, Sandrini Solar, which is in Kern County, has a $250,000 community benefit fund, but it's really loose, like to either be used in Kern County where development is, or something to benefit Humboldt County residents. So I think, I don't know if we can, we could pause this solicitation and hash that out now, or we could develop, a model practice for that, for solicitations, or bring that back.
I don't necessarily want to pause this solicitation, but I think it's worth talking about. I mean, we're already, so as a, when I say we, I mean like a lot of us in this room are part of different conversations with like, say, Core Hub, and like we've made a commitment to participate in that group. And not only has the county, but RCEA has been participating in that around renewable energy and what those projects mean as far as community benefits and how those funds are distributed in the community. I don't necessarily think whoever's putting offers forward for this needs to contribute to that fund, but it is going, like, there's already just so much work around that happening. So they can commit to like a community benefit pot of funds that we would have discretion to distribute, or something that's more on a community scale. I just, since there was, it says like you can get 10 points for this, but it doesn't specify what that might look like. I just wasn't sure if there was more information we would want to be able to get.
Yeah, so Richard and I were talking about aligning the evaluation criteria with the preferred criteria. So we can certainly add community benefits to that portion of the solicitation and give some examples of what we consider that to be. And then that, what Eileen was referring to with the Sandrini contract, that community investment fund appendix, I did add that to the energy storage service agreement pro forma, so it is in there. Expecting some developers will just cross it out. But that's certainly, like, we included that as, to start the conversation on with them. Because it is typically, it is larger projects and larger developers that commit those funds typically. So it depends on kind of who responds, and but at least it's in there.
Because if I were looking at this as a, I mean, I imagine companies that look at these types of requests for offers are have a different kind of mindset and skill set than I do, but if it's not in the preferred criteria or spelled out a little bit more, I wouldn't want it to get missed if it's gonna be a criteria, and I think it's really important. People are very much starting to want this for projects,
Yeah.
even if they don't know exactly what it means. So it's just this evolving conversation, but since we are looking to adopt this today, I would say I feel comfortable as staff adding it to preferred criteria with just a little bit more information. That is a change that we don't have the exact wording for. Do other folks feel like that's enough information to add that? Other members?
Yeah, I totally support that, and I think that just getting that clarification and then the questions here, I think that makes sense to include that.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Sounds good.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Louise.
Wondering about the 20 megawatts and less, can you talk a little bit more about that piece?
Yeah, so we already have several storage contracts. There it is. For resources and development that are pretty large, the 92 megawatt St. Green battery storage project, as well as 50 megawatts from the Prologis Drifter contract, which is, you know, those are both non-local resources. But it's sort of just to how much storage we actually want to contract. We don't necessarily want to go contract another 100 megawatt. We don't have the appetite for another 100 megawatt battery storage facility. Or even maybe a 50 megawatt. And yeah, so we sort of set that cap in an effort to, you know, get hopefully also to increase diversity and to potentially get multiple smaller projects and it's one big project. But it can certainly be adjusted if that is the direction for it.
Just curious about the reason. All right, we will also need to establish an ad hoc committee for going forward with this. So are there folks that are interested in providing feedback and helping to create the short list? Okay, we got Jack.
I need to disclose that Blue Lake potentially is involved with one of the developers that's going to respond to this article. So I don't know if I'm able to vote today on this topic or serve on a ad hoc or anything.
Yeah, and that's interesting because it's Blue Lake in its proprietary capacity as opposed to Blue Lake as a governmental agency. Like Blue Lake owns the property.
Correct.
That it is seeking to develop in its proprietary capacity. So I would suggest that's a caution to not participate at the ad hoc level. I don't know enough to know whether we would have a conflict in participating in the decision on this or not. So we can pursue that some more if you want. You can go with your gut level on that, but I would suggest you not volunteer for that part.
We got one. We got two. I can be a third. I think 4 is a great number though. Do we have a 4?
Sorry.
Yes. Okay, can Sherry do it though, because she's not voting on
This
this.
is, yeah, this is, see.
It's just an advisor capacity then.
No.
Okay.
Well, and full contracts do go to the board for the contracts will come back to everyone.
I think Sherry should be able to do it as an advisor.
Yeah.
Great. Perfect. Okay, so then we have interests then, yeah. So Jack, myself, Scott, and Sherry as an ad hoc committee. And then the third item too, there's lots of things for us to approve. So based on that, any final questions or comments for Jocelyn before we open it up for public comment? Not seeing anything. Anybody from the public wishing to comment on this item? How about on Zoom? All right, well, I will bring it back to the board for approval of these 3 items and creation of an ad hoc committee consisting of Jack, myself, Scott, and Sherry.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second, all right. Then we will vote, raise of hands, all in favor, aye, and Blue Lake and Water District are on voting, and Elise is staying. Thank you, Lori. All right, thank you, Johnson. And I guess you're next, you're going to introduce our guests, for item 7.2, Ocean Wave Energy Grant Proposal, Letter of Intent.
Great. So full disclosure, Richard has been shepherding this item, but he is at another appointment, so I'm just covering for him. But a few weeks ago, he was approached by Core Power, this company that we have a representative here from to talk to the board. To ask for, they're asking RCEA to sign a letter of intent for a grant application that they're working on to the Department of Energy's Oceans of Opportunity grant program. And because the scope of what they're asking, you know, RCEA's role to be in this, in the pilot wave power project that they're proposing off the coast of Oregon. We thought, and because of the board's interest in wave energy, and you know, it's in our strategic plan to explore viability of wave power. We thought it would be great to have them come and give a short presentation to the board. So Kevin, I'll turn it over to you to present on your company and the technology, and then talk about what you're asking of RCEA.
And really quick, Kevin, where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from Stockholm, Sweden.
I want
So
to thank
it's,
you for joining us at what I'm assuming is either very early or very late for you.
thanks for having me. And just to mention also, I'm standing in for Patrick Möller, our CEO. So as mentioned, I'll tell you a little bit about Core Power Ocean and also about wave energy and the collaboration that we hope to have with you as well. So in Core Power, we are on a mission to power the planet with clean electricity from ocean waves. So basically, we are a developer of these wave energy systems that you see on the screen there. And you can go to the next slide. So why is this interesting? I mean, of course, it's one of the largest untapped sources of clean energy on the earth, actually. So we're talking about a 500 gigawatt opportunity of easily extractable electricity. But what makes this really interesting is wave energy's very consistent production profile. And why is this interesting? Well, we have all these renewable sources like solar, PV, and wind, but we need something to stabilize that energy mix. And this is what we see there on the map, is that we're looking for locations where you have swell waves pumping into the coasts and that are not correlated to the local wind conditions. And this is particularly true on the US West Coast and also on the Atlantic coast nations in Europe. So this is what we need to bring stability to the clean energy mix. And I'll show you an example from the US if you go to the next one. So here you see an example from the US West Coast of 1 week of actual production of solar PV and wind. And then there's let's say a simulated wave energy installation with actual wave data, let's say. So here you can see the gray bars are the solar PV profiles, and then underneath you see the wind profile. And you can see the clear pattern there. When you have the sun shining all day, the wind is picking up a bit. But in between, you see there is really a lot of gaps, and that's where we see wave energy can play a very important role in the US particularly, I would say, to fill the gaps when it's not sunny or windy. So you can go to the next one. So we should really see our oceans as a giant solar battery, basically, and it can take the role of really stabilizing the energy mix and take the, let's say, role that fossil fuels has had in the past. But it also has the opportunity to reduce the amount of storage needed and also the overcapacity that we see today, and also the problems with the, let's say, fluctuating energy prices, that it can really bring this stability that we need to the mix.
And if you go to the next one. So why haven't we seen any commercial wave energy in the past? And it's basically because it's such a big challenge to make devices that are, strong enough to survive the toughest storms, while at the same time produces enough electricity compared to size, weight, and cost. So historically, devices have simply broken in storms or simply not been efficient enough. And these are challenges that we have been addressing in Core Power. So you can go to the next one. So we have been addressing that by introducing this new type of high efficiency wave energy converter. And this is what we call the Core Power C4. That's on location in Portugal, where it's currently being tested. So this is a 300 kilowatt machine in full scale, 9 meters in diameter and 19 meters long, weighing about 100 tons. So if you go to the next one. So we have introduced technology that makes these devices naturally protected in storms using advanced phase control technology that strongly amplify the power capture in regular waves. And here you can see how it operates. You have the buoy there on the ocean surface, moving up and down with the waves. It's connected to the seabed. And then you have the, let's say, generators inside the buoy, converting this linear motion to rotation and then to electricity. So we have proven how these innovations can make wave energy both robust and competitive. So we are able to deliver 5 times as much energy per amount of equipment needed than has been possible before. So it's really a breakthrough in wave energy, we think. So if you move to the next one. Wave energy has been up and coming for many, many years. And this framework that has been put together by EIA, OES, is really following like a structured process of deploying or developing wave energy. So we have followed this since the inception in 2012, working with smaller, let's say, smaller scale buoys, and then scaling up slowly, both in terms of the size of the buoy and team and money spent. So right now we are in stage 4, where we have deployed this first full-scale device in Portugal. And we're currently now adding 3 more devices, or developing the next generation based on the learnings from stage 4 to really prove, let's say, the array concept of the system. So you can move to the next one. So what we have achieved so far is the C4, as I mentioned. So this is it operating at relatively small waves, of course, but you can see how it's enhancing the motion there from the ocean waves. And this is producing power to the Portuguese grid at the moment. You can go to the next one. So here you can really see some part of the operations that we have in Portugal. This is our mobile factory concept, for instance. Or we wind the project glass fiber boards and also the installation process. So you can move to the next one. So we're seeing that wave energy is receiving a lot of traction, especially in Europe at the moment. So we have several projects underway, developed in Europe. So the most, let's say, advanced project is a 5 megawatt project in Ireland, together with the state utility ESB. So it's basically a 14 devices project, 5 megawatts. And that's scheduled to be deployed by 2029. But there are also other projects that are on the way. But now we're looking to expand to the US. And as mentioned in the beginning there, that you're actually putting a lot of funding in place now to accelerate the development of wave energy in the US, which is really exciting. So you can go to the next one. So how we see this is that we're installing these devices in high density clusters. So it's not that you only have one device. You have these clusters, and we call them core packs. So these core packs are used to form these large scale utility farms. So one core pack is between 10 and 30 megawatts, and then you can stack them on top of each other to either build standalone farms or hybrid wind wave farms. So in our project in Portugal, we're joined by both product developers, utilities, like mentioned, ESP, Enel, Total Energies, who are working with us to best understand how they can make best use of this complementary production profile. And if you go to the next one. So we are a team of 90 employees in Sweden at the moment. We've raised 95 million euros and most recently a $32 million round for scaling up the technology and rolling it out. And if you go to the next one. So what we are aiming to do now is to make an installation on the US West Coast at PacWave. So it's a 2-buoy installation to make a demonstration there, which has proven to be quite important. Talking to a lot of stakeholders in the US, they want to see these devices being deployed in US conditions, basically. And this is a quite interesting area, or PacWave is a fantastic opportunity because it's pre-permitted. There is a substation in place and there's already export cables installed and also berth installed. So here we are now applying for the DOE grant for open water demonstration. So that we are working on very hard at the moment to submit by the end of January next year. And in that process, we are looking for partners that can support showing support for wave energy and core power in this application. So that's why we reached out to you and some other stakeholders as well that are willing to support not only the application as such, but also during the project being part of the project, not in, let's say, there's no costs related to it. So it's more being able to assist with the business case assessment, optimal mix studies, so that you can understand how you can make most use of this for your constituencies in California and around Humboldt. And we also want your support in doing site assessment, maybe help us with PPA structures and so on, cost of energy modeling, and also reviewing the product roadmap to make sure that we're making products that would suit you in the future. So yes, that's about it from my side. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Right, yeah, do we have any questions for Kevin? Yeah, go ahead, Natalie.
Well, thank you, Kevin, for being here. This is very exciting as an opportunity to, work with you on this. It's very cool. My questions are kind of financial in nature, though. Would there be, it's not clear to me if there'd be any component, it looks like we wouldn't be receiving any financial support, but possibly for staff time. So that wasn't totally clear to me if we would have any staff time covered. And then it mentions procurement, potentially a small portion of our power in the staff report, but I wanted to see if there's any mechanism for guaranteeing that we can procure from the project once if and when it kind of begins to produce commercial scale power.
I mean, from the DOE funding, there is no money available. So we're hoping that you will be willing to participate at your own cost in the project for these simple, let's say, support items. So we don't expect it to be too time consuming, but it would be good to have a few hours per, let's say, quarter or so to discuss these matters to make sure that we, let's say, steer the development in the best interest of companies like yourselves.
And we've discussed it, we'll bring back, more, if they're awarded, of what exactly that staff time commitment will be for the board to see. Okay. But we, internally have discussed that the opportunity to participate early on with this demonstration project would provide us a lot of insight for future developments in Humboldt County, and that would be worth it in our opinion to extend the staff time to participate. And then as far as your question about guarantee of procurement, we don't even know if it's possible to procure since it's being developed in Oregon. And there's a lot of questions that we don't have answered. And I also, have just in the back of my mind thought of any kind of conflicts of interest in participating, as a review. And so those are all things we'll have to hash out in more detail and probably involve some legal review as well before having any guarantees.
So, I mean, in my perspective, it's in your interest would be more to let's say, take part of the outcomes of the project so that you learn about the technology and how you can make best use of it in a California perspective. Although it's deployed in Oregon, we believe that these type of studies will have to be made all the way along the US West Coast, basically. And you do have a fantastic resource in California as well.
Good question. Any other questions or comments about this topic?
I have a question.
Sorry, you are right. I'm the wrong here.
Is there, what do you know about the potential for this sort of location off our coast in Humboldt County? I mean, have there been studies done already that identify certain locations where this is particularly good?
We have done studies around Humboldt, preliminary studies, actually along the entire US West Coast. And what we see is that you have one of the best resources in the entire world, not only on a, let's say, hourly basis where they have this complementarity, but you also have a fantastic seasonal variability where we see that during summer when let's say sun and wind are quite high, we see the waves are low, and then it's opposite during winter time. So you have a fantastic complementarity on a seasonal basis as well. But then to move the studies forward, we really need to understand other constraints that you have around, there might be shipping lanes, fisheries that needs to be taken into consideration, water depth, all these other things that make it feasible or not to implement it in your region. So this is something that we want to understand and make sure that we mitigate all those, let's say, risks for the future, so that wave energy can be deployed in your region and other regions as well.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you, and yeah, very interesting presentation and cool possibilities out there. I'm gonna open it up to public comment. Is there anybody wishing to comment on this item? Not seeing anybody in person. Is there anybody online? All right, and I will bring it back to the board. We have the requested action up here in front of us to authorize staff to develop and provide a letter of intent in support of Power Ocean's proposal. Do we have a motion or?
I would move that we.
All right, we have one motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
And we have a second. All right, we'll do a show of hands vote. All in favor, aye. All right, and of our voting members, that looks unanimous. Thank you. And thank you, Kevin, for your presentation. And looks like we're gonna probably be hearing more from you in the future.
Thanks very much. Thanks very, very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Hey, yeah, with that.
Right, no. Bye-bye.
The CEO lives in Tokyo.
Less of a time. All right, so we will end our CCE business and we're going to move into our old business, item 8.1, Regional Resilience Grant Program. Design build solicitation, and Juliet Bowman to report.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Chair Shaver, it's the first time I've presented in front of this board. It's nice to be here. My name is Juliet Bond and I am the Infrastructure Programs Manager at RCEA. My primary focus in this role is to enhance energy resilience at critical facilities in Humboldt County as per the 2019 RCEA Repower Strategic Plan update. So I'm here this evening at this meeting to present on, to introduce the project that RCEA has undertaken as part of the Governor's Office of Planning and Research Regional Resilience Grant Program. In 2023, RCEA applied for and received a $3 million grant to install solar and battery energy storage systems at 16 fire stations and 1 communications tower in the located in the most remote and high fire risk parts of our county. The official name of this project, here, let's get some slides. There, all right. The official name of this project is the Energy Resilient Fire Services in High Threat Communities. We will simply refer to it often as the RRGP or Regional Resilience Grant Program for the Solar Plus Battery at Fire Stations project. The purpose of this work is to ensure that our project partners, all 16 fire stations, have power to operate when the grid is down, either during or after disasters or during planned electricity grid outages. These installations will be standalone systems, meaning that the solar and battery systems can be isolated from the grid when utility grid is down as needed. The systems will be designed to offset up to 100% of the annual energy usage at these sites, and will also be capable of 100% self-reliance during most months of the year. An additional benefit of installing these systems is that the daily energy purchases will be offset by these systems, reducing the ongoing operating costs of the fire stations throughout the year and on an ongoing basis. The solar battery systems are fully funded from the RRGP grant program and will be owned by the project partners once the systems are fully installed and commissioned. The systems will be built with standard solar and battery equipment, and our plan is to complete them by the end of 2026 per the grant agreement requirements. As an update, we have in September and October completed we got our partnership agreement signed. That was a big undertaking with 16 partners. And then in September and October, we completed our site assessments. We went to each and every one of these sites and gathered operational data and also spoke with the site hosts and looked for good locations for the solar and battery equipment. The next step is the preliminary design work, which we're in progress now. These preliminary designs will be used to create a project portfolio for use in the procurement process to hire a qualified firm to do the final designs and installation work of these 17 projects. This project portfolio, the preliminary designs, will also be used for the project partners to provide us feedback on these designs. And this map shows you the locations of our projects. Sorry for those of you on the side. We have a combination of systems that we've identified for our projects. Some are roof mount or rack mounted projects, which we're here to talk about the solicitation for this evening, and others will be mobile or trailer mounted solar and battery systems, depending on the need at the site. When complete, the RRGP project will establish energy resilience at the most remote fire stations throughout the county. This strengthens the overall regional resilience of our county as fire stations provide emergency response, not only to their immediate service area, but also the outlying areas in between fire station locations through mutual aid agreements. This is especially important considering fire stations not only respond to wildfires and structure fires, but also handle medical calls, auto accidents, and other disaster response activities, like removing down trees across roads and ensuring people on medical devices can charge their equipment. This is only the introduction to this project. I'm sure that you will see us up here again talking about it as we move forward, but at this moment, I'd like to go ahead and turn the microphone over to Laura Youngin to go over the procurement process that we were seeking your support for this evening. Thanks.
So Juliet made a really good case for approaching the construction contracting for these roof mount systems as a design build process. So with guidance from General Counsel Diamond, we are proposing you guys approve this design build process, which will include a first step of a request for qualifications. So it would allow us to get going on that request for qualifications. Would also include forming an ad hoc subcommittee to help us with the process and keep everything on track and moving quickly. And so once we received qualified responses or responsive I guess solar installers, we would put together a list of these qualified respondents, and you would help us approve then releasing a request for proposals to this qualified list. And then we would ideally award a contract based on the proposals that we received back. So then we would bring, I guess, the group decision back to the board, likely in April, maybe sooner. And then we would approve awarding the contract to do all of these response all over the county.
Is that 3 million gonna cover everything?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, with a caveat. I would say so the $3 million by everything, it covers RCEA staff time as well as the cost for the purchase and installation of the equipment. The only caveat I have to say is there are some special cases where, say, a roof might need some reinforcement or might need certain things that come up that we would work closely with our project partners on, and also look to our budget to see if we can assist in that manner. But the solar and battery equipment and the staff time and the design builder costs would all be covered by the $3 million. So there's not any expected cost for our partners, but things do come up. So it can, in the name of full transparency.
So these are, from a megawatt perspective, these are pretty small systems.
These are very small systems, starting at around 2 kilowatts up to 80 kilowatts is our estimated range of system sizes at the preliminary design phase. So very small, but with 2 pretty big ones.
What would the ad hoc committee get to do? The role?
Like that attitude. The ad hoc committee, well, this might be a good question for you, but certainly approve the shortlisted, the shortlisted qualified respondents from all those who respond. So make sure that we feel like they have the capabilities and experience and financial wherewithal to take on a project of this scale. And Lori, do you have any other?
Yeah, and then I guess approve releasing the request for proposals once we get the list to this list, and then potentially help us review the proposals that come in to award the contract. My understanding of a design build is that we can use like a best value approach. It's not, lowest cost necessarily. So it could be a little bit more subjective, and input would be helpful in deciding, who we would put forward to recommend an award to.
Nancy, I would have a question. So I would know every single contractor that would be in this area, so I would love to be part of this, but I don't think I.
Well, I mean, knowing versus having a personal financial gain from the process is something you can sort of mentally tease out, whether you think your acquaintance is really biased or opinions. But, if there is, number one, no personal financial gain to you, or as you've done the trainings, you know that you is your family, your business interest. Then the question is whether you think you can still be unbiased, even though you don't know them likely to.
If I may add one thought, we aren't seeking to limit participation in the request for proposals we're looking to identify everyone who's qualified and then everyone who's qualified would be invited. So we're not going to cut out people or there would be no this firm versus that firm. If you can make the bar of qualified, you will get shortlisted and can then participate in the request for proposals process.
Right, any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Sherry.
Can you talk to me a little about the decision between design build and design bid build and what went into that?
Yeah, well, probably, so, a lot of it was just staff experience and knowledge with solar installations. Solar plus battery system installations. And the feeling that if we had to go through a traditional like design bid build process, it would be more expensive and potentially cause project delays due to potentially a design, somebody designing the project and then the solar installer showing up on these remote sites and saying, they didn't consider this, and we would do this, and potentially like having to redesign things. And so the approach of, well, if you're gonna do all these kind of remote everywhere rooftop systems, it would probably be better to have the same firm designing and installing.
And if I may just add to that a little bit, this is a somewhat of a unique market, the solar industry, where these folks are specifically focused on designing systems. They've done it many times. They have relationships with engineers that they go to regularly to review and stamp the systems. And so in that way, the industry in itself is very accustomed to operating in this way. And as Lori mentioned, this is definitely takes some of the development risk out of, inconsistencies between the design and the installation. And, leverages the solar designers' wealth of experience, because that's the only type of things that they design for versus going out to a general engineering firm who designs bridges and roadways and houses and whatever. These folks are absolutely experts in this field, and they've done 100 designs, and they can recognize things like, oh, that transformer is not the right size, or oh, this thing
Yeah,
is,
but what I'm saying though, is that the competition between those, every so we get the thing, everybody's on a list, the qualified people are on a list, right? And then for these different locations, are they then competing, the people on that list are competing to be on this, or there just really isn't competition? Is that what we're saying?
That's a great question. In order to engage in the design build process, you have to have a project that is valued at over $1 million. And so these projects are going to be combined into one project. And therefore one firm, which we're expecting to have a design build entity, which will be a team that gets, we expect to perform a team as needed, but it will be one project effectively, but only for the rack mounted systems portion of this project.
It will be competitive at the RFP.
Right.
So we'll have these qualified firms that will have to meet a certain bar qualifications, and then we'll put out the request for proposals. And then the proposals will be competitive. But another thing, when Nancy and I were looking for examples, for instance, there actually aren't a lot, because there's a special code in California that allows public entities to go a different contracting process if they're procuring solar systems for themselves. Since we're doing this on behalf of these volunteer, some nonprofit entities, we couldn't use that contracting code. But that is a lot of what solar installers are used to. They're like, we can do this like one-stop shop with a lot of other public entities for these big solar installations, but we can't use that as we're contracting on behalf of other entities.
The size of these projects makes me feel better about design build, but design build, when there's big projects with lots of entities, the checks and balances are generally not as clear cut as they are in design build. And so that was my main concern, you know, is that these are small. Probably it'll be fine. In design build, there just has to be more trust that everybody's, well, I mean, the thing with design build is, hey, we're all on the same team and everybody's moving towards the same goal, you know, of building these things, which is true. But for instance, like, you know, design build that's happening on campus. Everybody does, I mean, in theory, everybody has a, hey, let's build this great engineering building. But not when you really get down to the, who's making money and who's gonna, you know, have a profit, who's gonna break even, that it becomes a lot more. There's different goals.
We do have some technical review through the Shots Energy Research Center. And again, what they were saying with just our in-house expertise on these types of installations. That, you know, we feel like they're, you know, versus I wouldn't know what to look for building a building per se for those checks and balances. But we do have some of those built into this project in general because of the type of project.
Yeah. And if I may add to that, what's also somewhat different here is these solar companies are responsible for making sure this project works through commissioning until they get paid. So they are really, it's different than a building in terms of applying the design and build to this, because there isn't going to be someone, there isn't, I think, as much of a check and balance in the sense that they have to make the project work as proposed in order to get paid. It's on them. So they are going to make sure they're almost their own check and balance. They're going to make sure everything works when it gets to that project commissioning phase. So it's almost self-regulated, but also to Eileen's point, we have two staff members who have extensive experience working in solar design and installation fields, and also, you know, in the electrician field. So, but I think that you gotta remember that this type of project in this field in particular behaves a bit differently than bringing people together for a building where the architect can say, no, I'm done, that's not my problem. It's like we have an advantage in this regard where the solar company is going to make darn sure this thing works as expected at the end of the day, or they're not gonna get paid, they can't commission the system.
So can I add one other thing, which is I don't know the dynamic that we're talking about with that building. But I am very intimately involved in very complex design. And I think a lot of the, well, let's all just trust this and move forward, is actually taking care of the transaction themselves. And so you hold the contractors accountable through the general conditions, for example, and you have the process built into that where they have to meet certain timelines or certain process standards in order to even have a change room. So I don't know that that's going to be necessary for this project, but I'll be involved in some of that.
And if I just maybe add one more thought that the solar industry, you can maybe liken it to someone who you would hire to build your house, who knows the best plumber that they've worked with for years and they completely trust, and the best electrician they've worked for years and they completely trust. They have these established relationships in order to function smoothly as the entity that they are. So we are leveraging those relationships in effect by putting the design and the installation together in one package.
So the alternate, oh, I'm sorry.
I'd love to add like a maintenance package, so whoever you, what?
We would all love to add a maintenance.
Right, so whoever you qualify, find as a qualified installer, they would have to come back, a certain amount of time and making sure that things are actually working. Which
we would like some kind of performance guarantee to be a part, but not something that would go into the request for proposal element, but it could be something that, yes, that we could discuss earlier, but I hear you, that's a really wise approach to make sure that you have that expertise on hand. Oh, I forgot to mention though, there is also going to be a operation and maintenance training required, of course, on the part of the designer installer, but then RCEA is also going to back that up and make sure as part of this grant, you go out there and make sure all of the operations and maintenance are well understood by the staff. But your point is very well taken.
So just well, first off, on the point that was made here, I think one of the roles of the ad hoc committee would be to provide input into the request for proposals so that when it is, and approve its, release, so that, we would be able to incorporate inside performance standards. But then, to Sherry's point, the alternative, design, bid, build project, just to tease that out a little bit more, would be, and there are, there are benefits and drawbacks to both. I mean, to go the more conventional route has it in more concrete limits, but it would be more labor intensive and it would be more time consuming. And then ultimately the construction contract would have to be led on awarded on a basis as opposed to best value. And best value is a little wishy-washy maybe, but it maybe is something that we have flexibility with.
It's
Maybe not.
Yeah, because as we're sitting here elected, one of our things is to make sure that we're spending money right. RCEA we have a good rep. We have a reputation of also like getting a lot of money. There's a lot of money rolling through this joint. And we do still need to make sure that we're spending it right.
I have a question. So was there any consideration to, because I just think of looking at this map of our similar, the chargers that were installed at these kind of remote locations throughout Humboldt County and how we ultimately ended up breaking them up because we couldn't really find anybody that wanted to do them all. Was that taken into consideration with this? And do you think just because of the type of work it is that we'll most likely see somebody that does want to do all of them?
Yeah, this is a much more established industry. The EV electric vehicle charging stations is a much newer type of installation that people are much less familiar with. Where solar has, I don't know, 20, 30, I don't know how many years, but we've got many installers in the county and in the surrounding county areas. It's just a much more established industry. So there should be a deeper pool of qualified folks who'd like to respond to us.
Yeah, we did consider that. Yeah.
And yes, to answer your question, yes.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I saw this map and it's always like keeping those two kind of projects straight too, because there's a lot of similar locations as well.
Would there be any opportunity for manufacturers to donate product and receive rebate or tax rebate incentives? Because I do know in module manufacturers, the battery manufacturers that have excess product that you can donate to fire stations.
I have not considered that as an idea, so I would love to hear more about it. I mean, just have not considered it. That would be great. I mean, that would stretch our budget, so that would be excellent.
All right, any other questions for Lori Juliet here? Not seeing any questions. We'll open it up to public comment. Is there anybody in person? Is there anybody online? All right, I will bring it back to the board for any final thoughts or, oh wait, we gotta form an ad hoc. Are there folks that are interested in participating in this ad hoc committee? You got John.
How much time are we expecting and when would we be meeting?
So I think meeting maybe at the beginning of February. And I couldn't really speak to time. I mean, I would set aside maybe a couple hours for reviewing feedback on the request for proposals that staff drafts. And also reviewing the short list of respondents that we get. And comparing that to the request for publications that's released. 3-4 hours maybe.
We can, I mean, I think staff can take a large portion of the first review and it would be recommendations. You'd have available all the documents to review if you wanted to do your own review. We wouldn't make you read through every single document.
Yeah, and I know we've like for various ad hoc committees like this, we've met kind of synchronously too, and got to review them and then just kind of give feedback. So, is that an interest?
I'll do this, I'll do that.
Okay.
I'll do it too.
Okay, so we got Jack, we got Jason, we got Natalie, Elise, and Elise. Okay. We could have up to 5 if there's one more person that is interested.
Well, I was gonna ask, can we have, non-board members on the ad hoc? Would it make sense to have someone from the Fire Chiefs Association, or I don't wanna like, Nancy's shaking her head at me, if that makes sense.
Reason being that, I would want to maintain a certain amount of confidentiality over the internal process. Once the decisions are final.
Okay.
But it was a good idea.
Thanks, Nancy.
It was.
All right, well, I think 4 is good, and maybe I could be an alternate if there's somebody that can't make it out. I think 4 will be good. All right, so we have, well, a bunch of things here. We have 4 people that want to be on this committee, so I will take a motion, to authorize, there we go, that one, and create an ad hoc committee with Jack and Jason and Natalie and Louise.
There's a third.
And there is a third, which is to delegate the authority to the ad hoc committee to approve the short list and to authorize the executive director to issue the RFP.
So moved.
Second.
So 1, 2, and 3, we have a motion and a second. That one for you. All right, all in favor, I will do a raise of hands vote. And that carries unanimously. Thank you, folks.
Thanks.
All right, and thank you. And Lori's gonna stay up here because she is going to introduce our 9.1 new business financial audit for fiscal years ending June 30th, 2021 and 2020.
Yeah.
Going back in time.
RCEA now has 2 more years of financial audits under the belt. And Bethany Ryers from Baker Tilly, our auditor's office, is here to present the results to you all. So I'll let her get to it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be here today. I don't know if you have my slides queued up or if I should just share my screen if that's easier.
We have them, and we can, if you wanna just let us know when to advance forward.
Set slide control also if we want.
Okay. Would you like us to advance your slides for you, or do you wanna have slide control?
Oh, you can go ahead and advance them. I'm easy, whatever's easiest for you.
Go ahead and.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm glad to be here today to present the June 30, 2021 and June 30, 2020 financial statement audit. As you mentioned, we're trying to do 2 audits concurrently at the same time every time we go through this, just in an effort to catch you up in your financial statement audits. If you want to go to the next slide, please. So as part of your audit, we provide you with 2 deliverables. The first is your audited financial statements, which includes the opinion in the front, as well as a separate report, which is really the required communication to the governing body. And that is called the Audit Insights and Results Report. And that's kind of the report I'm going to just touch briefly on as part of this presentation. But of course, I'm happy to discuss either report with you and answer any questions that you have. If you go to the next slide, please. So as part of our audit, our core responsibilities are listed in that report and are on the screen in front of you. So we are required to plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance that your financial statements and footnotes are free from material misstatement and presented in accordance with governmental accounting standards, which is GAAP for you all. Reasonable assurance is a very high level of assurance, but it is not absolute assurance. And as part of getting to that level, we do a lot of steps, including reviewing key processes and controls over those key financial areas, reviewing significant estimates, and evaluating the appropriateness of accounting policies that are used. If you can go to the next slide, please. So as part of the audit, again, we do focus on significant estimates, the implementation of new accounting standards, which there were none in the 2 years under audit or none that impacted the authority, and then key transaction cycles, which are listed on the next slide. You can go to that one. And these are basically the material transaction cycles that the authority has. So every account that is material in nature, we do review and validate in some way, shape, or form, whether through confirmation procedures, vouching to supporting invoices, or substantive analytic procedures. You can go ahead and go on to the next slide, please. So all in all, your audit was performed in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards as promulgated by the AICPA. And that audit objective, again, is that reasonable assurance that your financial statements are free from material misstatement. The authority did receive an unmodified opinion, which is considered a clean opinion, and again, the highest level of assurance that we can provide to you as your auditors. I mentioned in the beginning that as part of the process, we do review key controls and processes over those main financial cycles that are included in your financial statements. And if we are to note a control deficiency that rises to the level of either a significant deficiency or a material weakness, we are required to communicate that to the governing body. And as is true in the prior year, and as is true with most governments of your size or entities of your size, you do have one material weakness related to the financial statement close process. This is very common as a lot of smaller governments do kind of lean on their auditor to assist with implementation of new accounting standards, to assist with some financial statement preparation, and to understand some of the more complex journal entries that GASB requires on an accrual annual basis. So if you want to go to the next slide. The next section of that report is really the required communication. I used to say, it's a really good read if you ever have insomnia, because it's doesn't change much from year to year, and it's pretty boilerplate. But it does go through what we are required to communicate to you. It's the section that you kind of want it to be dull, because that means things went really well and we don't really have anything interesting to report. But it does kind of go through, again, what our responsibility is, that we're independent with respect to the authority. It talks through any significant estimates that are included in your financial statements, and there is a discussion of the audit adjustments that were noted as part of the audit. But overall, there are no audit findings or any concerns at all. And it was a very clean audit. If you want to go to the next slide. As you know, since we are a little behind in the audit process, there's quite a few governmental accounting standards that are effective or have been effective since then. I will like to note that we have scheduled the 2022 and 2023 audits for early January. So we're hoping to kind of get you more on a cyclical audit and hope to catch you up here in the next year. For the 2022 and 2023 audits, there are two accounting standards that will be effective that could potentially have an impact. The first is GASB 87 for leases that is effective for fiscal year 2022. And the second is GASB 96 for subscription-based IT arrangements. And I do apologize for the typo. That effective date should be 6/30/2023, which we will work with management to implement those standards and get those audits completed timely. You can go into the next slide. So all in all, everything went well. I was trying to get through this presentation quickly for you. But of course, I'm here if you have any questions on that audit insights and results report or the audited financial statements. And I have our contact information on the next slide. If you ever have any questions or concerns related to the audit, ultimately we are hired by the board and we're required to report directly to you. So we'd love to hear from you throughout the year if you ever do have any questions or concerns. And of course, I do want to thank everyone at the authority for their help going through this process and getting ready for the audit. Not just having to think back all the way to 2021 and 2020, but find all the supporting detail for us so that we can issue our audit opinion and go through 2 audits in one go. You know, we spend quite a bit of time going through everything and preparing the audit, but your staff probably spends double or triple the amount of time getting ready for us and getting us all that information, and are always very timely with requests and answering our questions. So we really do appreciate that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bethany. Does anybody have any questions about what was in our packet?
I'm just like, as a curiosity, I'm wondering how many months you actually spend doing these audits? Is it a full year?
No,
I mean-
it depends. I think there were a few issues with these 2 audits with some of the reconciliations for accounts receivable that we went back and forth with a little bit. And because it's not in a set schedule, sometimes there's a little timing issues with availability of staff. We normally have 1 week set aside and we get the majority of items done in that 1 week. And the remainder is fine tuning those final items and then preparing the financial statements. If we have everything scheduled and everyone available, we can get through the audit in probably 2 months.
Thank you.
I sincerely apologize if this was talked about while I was in the bathroom, but the recommendation around an investment policy, could you speak to that a little bit?
So we recently brought to the board, oh, sorry, Bethany, we brought an investment policy to the board and it was adopted. Partly because we knew that was gonna be a recommendation from the audit.
So that's no longer, I mean, I apologize for not remembering that now, so it's no longer something we need to take action on.
We recently adopted a procurement and an investment policy for RCEA.
Great. Yeah, we definitely did that.
And I just, well, good job.
So we've already, we foresaw the future.
Yes, yeah.
Great.
I wanna say again how grateful I am to Lori and her staff for getting through 2 years at once and then being enthusiastic about starting this in January. So, you know, we're gonna start the second week in January with field work, if all goes well, for the next 2 years. And so the commitment that the finance team has made to getting us caught up with Baker and Tilley's help is just, can't go without giving them a big pat on the back.
And now they're writing down. Board member Raya doesn't know about the investment. Remind board members of what it is. Thank you. No, that's very helpful. I'm glad we had such a good team put together and that it's great to get an unmodified audit.
Yes, go ahead, Skip.
But then you discuss doubtful accounts. And we from 0.3 to 3%. But it's not a concern. When does it, or when might become a concern?
Did you hear that question, Bethany? I can try to recap Director Jorgensen's.
I'm sorry, I did not. I couldn't hear that.
Yeah, correct me if you want me to.
Okay.
So he mentioned the doubtful accounts went from 0.3% to 2 to 3%, that it was deemed not a concern. Can you speak to when you would deem it a concern?
So what we did was, I think this actually came about in last year's audit, where we were looking at the aging report for accounts receivable and what was accrued as in the allowance for doubtful accounts. And we had spoken with management to say, and they had a policy to automatically accrue 0.3% of sales, as you know, we are unsure if we're going to be able to collect this, right? So and that's with your accounts receivable to say, this is what we actually think we're going to be able to collect from what is outstanding. And at that time, when we looked at the aging report, the amount over, I think it was 240 days or 180 days, was much larger than what was included in the allowance for doubtful account, which is questioning, right? So we had spoken with management and they said, well, yeah, actually probably 3% is a more reasonable estimate. So at that time, we had made an audit adjustment to accrue more as an allowance for doubtful accounts. So this year, when we looked at it again, they had increased it because, you know, this is kind of an ongoing process, and these audits were, you know, we're kind of going back, and as we're having these discussions, these audit times have already passed. So we had spoken with them again, and we made those audit adjustments to increase again those allowances to kind of be more reasonable as it relates to comparing to your aging report. And because those were adjusted in your financial statements, those are reflected in your financial statements, that kind of goes along with the material weakness over financial reporting that was reported. And that's kind of where that goes. And this is more of a recommendation, like you should continue to review that because it is a significant estimate, and ensure that as you review the allowance account and what has been or historically written off in the AR account, you know, to just kind of fine tune that as you go, as you get more data. Did that help answer the question? I apologize if I was a bit long-winded.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bethany. Other questions? Yes, go ahead, Sherry.
Say thanks again to staff. This is catching up is hard, especially when you're trying to do the usual financial work of the organization and catching up, and getting a clean opinion is great. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. All right, I will open it up for public comment. Is there anybody here to comment? Anybody online? All right, not seeing any, I will bring it back to the board to accept and approve these financial statements.
Thank you.
June 30th, 2021. And 2021. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. And motion carries, and Director Bauer has left the building. All right, that takes us to 9.2. Thank you, Bethany. Thank you, Baker Tilly. Thank you, staff. Off the work there. And Stephen Coleman is here to report.
Thank the board. Before I start, I was under the understanding that some of the board members, or any other board members needing to leave soon, just trying to figure out the timing of this presentation.
I think we're all
We all here now. Okay.
You got the next.
I'm not gonna say yes. Okay. It's not like it's a 3-hour.
I think we just have to put your meeting expectations.
Yeah, for your, yeah.
And- Okay. All right, so coming to you with yet another Rural Run North presentation and some items. Just have a few slides for you this time. Going over a little bit more of an overview of what we are planning with the Rural Run North, and then into tonight's action items. And so to remind you, the Rural Run North is comprised of 4 partners, 3 others, along with ourselves, or the Coast Energy Authority, and so that's the Mendocino Council of Governments in Mendocino County, the Lake Area Planning Council in Lake County, and Sierra Business Council, covering 14 counties in the Sierra Nevada region. And as you know, RCEA is the lead portfolio administrator for this entire operation, which is why we're dealing with so many administrative action items. And this is just to give a sense of the territory that the rural run north is covering, showing those Sierra Nevada counties, the North Coast counties. And someday we might work on trying to join those two blocks as a single unit. And we are planning within the rural REN 7 programs that are going to be launching at different times throughout this process. This current agreement that we're working under is through 2027, and so beginning with a residential equity program, outreach, education, assessments, the residential energy kits, sort of like the same res kits that we provide currently through RCEA. And there'll be what's called a residential resource program that's continuing our rebate programs that we've been continuing uninterrupted through different funding streams over the past number of years, offering heat pump and energy efficient equipment and electrification rebates. Also doing that on the non-residential side, and also some more direct install where we'll be preparing for partner contractors to help install and serve area businesses and agencies. A finance program, which we're really excited about, probably launching towards the end of 2025, doing microloans and gap loans to help agencies and businesses with who might get on-bill financing but don't have the money up front to start projects. Workforce education and training, again, launching towards the end of 2025. Codes and standards program that we haven't decided on a launch date yet. We want to align that with other programs that are offered. And a public equity program that is really only going to be launching in Mendocino and Lake counties, because we currently offer public equity programs through our partnership with PG&E. We do a lot of assessments and referrals and other services for public agencies, schools, tribes, and others throughout the county. So, yeah, just a quick overview of what the rural run actually is before I'm asking you to approve budget adjustments and contracts. And so just some outcomes. I'm not going to read them all. That should be in the packet, unless anybody wants me to read them all. Hearing not. So the first item, or I'm not sure which order, I guess it's a combined item, but we're or this isn't actually an item on the action item. We've in conversations with admin, finance staff, and legal, we've changed this up a few times on its way to you. But we will be implementing partner contracts for what we're calling the pre-launch scope of work. And so, as you may recall, the Rural Run North was approved September 26th. Ourselves and our partners have been working diligently on a lot of administrative tasks, implementing an MOU, developing these programs. We've been doing this all without any current funding, waiting for our contract with PG&E to come through to have that money. And so we're executing these contracts currently in the not exceeding the spending authority of the executive director, and then we'll be bringing additional contracts at our mid-year budget cycle in February. But there's a list of the activities, things that I just listed, along with needs assessments, implementation plans, a lot of regulatory work to get these programs to our constituents. And then also a preliminary budget adjustment, adjusting the revenue for the portion of these funds that are needed to execute these contracts and these costs in order to execute these contracts. The anticipated budget addition for the Rural Run North through the contracts will be brought again in that February full budget adjustment. Where we want to align all of the costs, but that'll be for the current fiscal year that we're in, 24-25, we're on in the range of over $7 million for those funds. And so that is goes back to the action item of Including the budget adjustment, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Just really quick to kind of reiterate why we're not bringing the full budget adjustment for all of rural Ren for 24-25. You know, it's going to fund a lot of staff and programs that we have budgeted for through CCE funded programs. And so, you know, we need to do some true ups of what's been spent to date, what we're gonna switch out with Ren funding. And so it's a larger, big picture that we need to get through the mid-year review before doing. But just in the interim, we have some things that we need to get the ball rolling before that February meeting.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thank
Yeah,
you for that, Eileen.
go ahead, Natalie.
I'm thrilled about this and very excited to be able to do this today. And I'm just very anxious about the statement that we haven't yet executed the contract with PG&E. I feel sure that will happen, but I'm a little nervous about making a budget adjustment until the contract's in hand. Is there could we provide a little clarity to the motion about once that is in place, then we will enter into these subcontracts, something like that?
So the contracts that we're entering with our project partners will have language that once RCEA has executed the PG&E contract. So this budget adjustment just allows us to change the budget, but the funds aren't leaving until we have that PG&E contract in hand. I will say CPUC, made the decision with allocating funds from September 26th through the 2027 date. And that the contract that we're executing with PG&E has been approved by our council, our board, and PG&E. The wheels don't move quickly through their process to get it signed.
We're just awaiting the executed contract, but no.
But could you though make the budget adjustment condition on receiving a fully executed funding agreement?
Then we wouldn't have to come back and undo it.
Yeah.
I will say we've already been authorized to enter into legal services, administrative services, and marketing. So we've already received your approval to start spending some of this money before we have that executed contract. I do think, of the 7 million, only doing this 500,000, which still seems or it's a little bit more than that. I think it's 1.1 million total of the but part of that is because we don't have that.
I think hearing that the CPUC already made that decision and that it's done the back and forth and we're just waiting on the final execution makes me more comfortable. I just have to think about this particular.
I'm trying to update my email because I was told I would have it by 4 o'clock today. So we aren't even talking weeks, we're talking about minutes.
Hours, yes. We've been waiting for it to come, and PG&E has said that they're completing a lot of end of the year business as well, but the full contract, all of the conditions on it, the data security requirements that we had to go back and forth on, that staff worked on, all of that's been completed, and we're just awaiting the executed copy, the DocuSign, essentially.
And I will say, PG&E staff said, can you assure us that you'll request all of your 2024 funds by December 31st, which is, and that was 2024 funds was 2 million.
2.5-ish.
And so they want that out the door before the end of the year.
Does that mean they'll actually send us?
They're waiting on us now, yeah, no. All right, other questions, or I'll open it up to public comment? How about on Zoom? All right, I will bring it back to the board for any final thoughts or questions or a motion to approve these budget adjustments. Motion. We have a second. All second. And we have a second. All right, all in favor, show of hands and votes, aye. And motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, and totally look forward to bringing back more costs and budgets in the very near future.
Yes.
Hear about program and also more talk about socializing this new activity that we're gonna be doing. It's gonna be pretty exciting. I love it in programs.
Feels good to be moving forward on it too, with a slightly different name, but mostly all the same. All right, that'll take us out of the main meat of the meeting and into our final item, which is our interim executive director's report. The last
I
interim executive director's report.
Will be my last meeting of the facilitator unless Beth wants to go on vacation, which she totally can, but not for a while. But I wanna tell the board how grateful I've been for this opportunity, and it's been a great learning opportunity, and just I've appreciated all of your support through this transition period, so thank you.
Same.
This past year. Thank you, thank you. It's been a lot.
Great.
That's so great. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. The only two items I had, one is I just wanted to update you that we have a number of CAC appointments that will be expiring March of 2025. We start the process of asking whether or not they would like to serve another term, and then we will contact you as board members if you want to nominate them for another term, if you have someone else in mind. I won't go through the list, but I just wanted to make you aware that Lori will be reaching out to each of you. We have 6 terms expiring. So, you know, it's quite significant, and that is on top of 3 vacancies. So for a committee of 15, that's a lot, and so I just appreciate when Lori reaches out, you know, if you can get back to her as soon as possible. And then the other item is our November and December. So we'll be setting our board meetings in January. And we have all the whole year is fine except November and December again. We thought we could come up with just one suggestion and approve it here, and then we'd have to bring it back in January for the board calendar, but there are a number of dates and conflicts. And so I'd like to propose but we could look at calendars now, that I can have Lori reach out to you all with a poll to see what will work prior to the January meeting for our November and December meetings. It's up to you. If you wanna, you can tell you what our proposals are, or we can just do it online at your convenience.
These are the ones in the packet.
They're in the packet. So, you know, the idea of putting them in the packet is you can start thinking about it and seeing what works before the whole comes out.
I think that sounds like a good option.
Matt?
Wait, oh. Sandrini.
Oh. No, not when you come up and get that report out.
Wow.
I have the pleasure of announcing that Sandrini has achieved commercial operation as of last Wednesday. 5 years in the making, so we will be coordinating with some board members for a ribbon cutting in Kern County sometime in Q1 of next year.
So stay tuned for that.
Hey.
Thanks, Jocelyn. All right. Is that everything, Eileen?
Yes, that's everything.
All right. Is that everything? Okay, and then future agenda items, anything anybody wants to bring up for our new year meetings? Think on it. This is the next meeting. All right.
Anything seems like to be kind of an anticlimax.
Yay.
Okay, well, with that, we are adjourned and our next meeting will be Thursday, January 23rd. Here at 3:30.